All right. So another thing that I'm actually pretty proud to show today is we launched a preview this week announcing new analytics capabilities that are available to PowerApps and Flow admins. And so what I want to show first is where these are. So what we're actually doing from a platform perspective is we are unifying our administrative experiences into a place we're calling the Power Platform Admin Center. And so the capabilities of the PowerApps and Flow Admin Center are going to be merged into this portal within the next 6 months. And the reason we're doing that is because the platforms for PowerApps, Flow, and Dynamics 365 are all coming together, and we're trying to build kind of one place instead of 3 or 4 different places to go manage all of those apps, manage all of those users, manage all of those licenses. And so as we launch some new capabilities, is what I'm going to show today, we are putting them within this new experience. And so what I want to show here is the new analytics capabilities that we have, and this is available for environment admins. And I think initially in the preview, you have to be a global tenant admin to access this. And what's really, really cool around this, I'm first going to go into PowerApps, is this environment here. This is actually, at Microsoft, we have a suite of, I think it's like 4 or 5 applications called the Thrive apps. These are the apps that actually our central Microsoft IT department has built and rolled out. And these are for various different scenarios, and we're going to see here some are for fun or some are more HR type of apps. But within here, what they have is they have the ability, and again, you can filter this this report per each of those environments. And so I have like those 24 environments and for a particular time period. And what this is giving me really a powerful view of is how many apps are actually being used? How many times are they being launched? So this kind of gives me a view of, you can see here, for our Thrive apps, we have the whole suite of them. We're having on a weekly basis thousands of people using those apps within our organization. And again, these are cross-platform apps, so they're being used primarily on our web player, but Android, iPhone, actually we don't have a lot of Windows phones on here, unfortunately. But this is speaking to that cross-platform nature of our service. And this is probably my most favorite report, because this actually shows like that Microsoft is a global company. Our own employees are spread across the globe. And yes, the biggest dot is in the United States, but we are spread everywhere. And I think this was like the one that what I thought was the coolest, and what's even more interesting is you can see, for example, here are the top launches, for example, within the United States, and here are these apps. So we actually have the top app is something called a Kudos App, and this is actually an app that really it's all about recognizing someone for doing something good or doing something good for you and kind of giving them kudos, and it sends kind of a note to them and also to their manager, and kind of, it's a really lightweight way of patting someone on the back and saying thank you for helping me out. And that's actually the most used app within our organization. And you can see here we actually launched an internal app a month ago, which is all around a contest that we have around predicting who wins the NFL games. And so this started a couple weeks ago with the start of the NFL season. And you can see here we have, it's like almost 1,300 users participating. And again, if you're building these applications that are being launched, you can use this report to get that visibility over where people are using it, how many times they're using it. And not only from an adoption point of view, what we've also launched is the ability for you to have insight into whether or not there are issues that people are hitting. So you can see here that the Kudos app happens to be the most used, but is also hitting some issues. And so these are talking about, when you see toast error here, this means anytime you see that red bar that launches within the PowerApps experience, that's essentially something that we call an error. And this gives you power to talk around and evaluate whether or not people are hitting issues within any of your applications. And you're going to have to go kind of dive in, but again, this is a top glance on, hey, did we see any spikes for issues, for example? And then lastly, what's also important is a big part of building applications is also, in some cases, building custom APIs that connect to them. And understanding how the performance of those APIs, and maybe connectors in some case, are impacting the user experience within your application. So another report that we have here provides insight into the response time. You can think of this as latency of the different connectors that are called by the app. And in some cases, some of these here, you can see here like the pay stub. This is actually for one of the Thrive apps that's all about viewing, for example, like your biweekly paycheck, for example. And that's actually a custom API that was built on top of our HR system that services that information. And you can see here that for Power Apps, we leverage a lot of the out-of-box APIs, out-of-box connectors, such as Office, but we also have a bunch of custom APIs that are built on top of the HR systems that power those applications. And if you have a central adoption of applications within your company, you're going to have a similar type of experience. And this gives you another way of getting visibility if there are issues to worry about. All right, cool. So I'm going to switch over to Flow. And again, so Flow is just available under Analytics. You click Microsoft Flow. I have it minimized so we can see it here. Flow gives you a similar view into analytics from an environment perspective. But it's a different set of metrics because Flow obviously are something that either run in a trigger mode or an automated mode. And again, this gives you visibility over how many runs are happening within your organization. Are those flows failing? Have they been canceled? It gives you an idea of, for example, if flows are being triggered from a button or from an automated point of view. How many times have they been running over this date range? And you can change, last 28 to the 14 or 7. And again, so you can see here that, for example, this is a notification that I get because I don't actually take a lot of my vacation. So I get a push notification that says, hey, and it's somewhat sobering, your vacation is going to expire, you better take it, go to the Thrive app. And so I'm probably account for too many of those runs there. But this, for example, gives you visibility of how many times that's being triggered. And this can be especially useful as you're thinking around debugging applications that are rolling out that are also asynchronously being triggered for various different reasons. Okay? It gives you visibility on new flows that have been created. So you can see here that these are new flows that have been were built earlier in the month around the deployment of the NFL prediction game. You can see here. I also have visibility into errors for flows. So similarly for Power Apps, flows can fail. This gives you visibility over the issues that might be being hit for flows within this environment. And also similar to created apps, you can also, for example, have visibility if apps are being shared with people. Okay? These is where if you add someone as a co-owner of the app, an event shows here and you have visibility around it. And then similarly and lastly for Flow, you have visibility over the how many and which connectors are being used for the flow. So if you want to understand whether or not people are building an app or flow on top of a particular connector, it might be one that, for example, you've bucketed into a particular category. You can have visibility of that from here. Okay? So just to reiterate, this is now in preview. If you want to go try it out, AKMS/PPAC. If you're a global tenant admin, you can go and try this out right now. It will light up for all of your environments. You can go check it out for the default environment, or if you have a production or development environment right now, go try it out. Again, the initial set of reports we're showing over the maximum of 28 days, show you adoption of those apps and flows, how many times they're running, who's using them, and tries to give you an initial set of reports around if there are issues you have to deal with or performance from an API perspective that you might have to go optimize those apps and flows. Cool. So from a monitoring perspective, what we've talked about so far is audit logging is here for Microsoft Flow. It's coming for Power Apps. It goes into the common activity logging service that's part of Office today. And there's some powerful things you can do on top of that service, and we're going to cover a little bit in that in the next section. Because there's an open API that's documented. If you want visibility over who has accessed Power Apps and Flow, we have a report for that. All you have to do is just go access it. And we have a new set of analytics capabilities that are just the beginning that are all around giving you visibility over the adoption, the usage, the performance of apps and flows within your organization or within the environment that you're working in. Cool. So the last section I want to dig into is, okay, that's all great, James, thanks. You've been rambling for quite a long time now. I understand kind of how I might want to approach security. I understand where I can go to view what people are doing or what people are doing once we've rolled these out for our organization. But then what action can I take? And we've talked about this a little bit today, and I've even showed it a couple times, but the Power Apps and Flow, Microsoft Flow Admin Centers and the Power Platform Admin Center eventually gives you that place, especially if you're a global tenant admin, to manage all the environments within your organization, to manage all the apps, the flows, all of those levels of permissions that we talked about, these can all be managed here. You have full visibility and full control over all the environments and those environment resources within your organization. The one thing I do want to call out is that the environment and app management does require a Plan 2 license, but you can try it out today with a PowerApps Plan 2 trial license if you want to just go check it out. Cool. So now what I was talking about is one of the awesome things, and I demoed this at the Business Application Summit. We actually have a couple templates around this in Flow that you can do on those activity logging. Is again, it's a public API, and because it's a public API, you can leverage Flow against it. And so what I'm going to show you here is, and I'm literally just going to go through one of the templates, is how you can actually build a flow that can do some really, really powerful things on top of those activity logging events. You know, if anyone created a flow, updated a flow, and eventually for PowerApps, if they created an app, shared an app, added a connection to an app, you can do some very, very powerful workflows and take action on an event that happened within your company using the activity logging that we store. So let's jump in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to, this is flow.microsoft.com, and I'm just going to click on templates here. And what you can do here is just search admin. This is the easiest thing for me. And these two here are two sample templates for two of those activity logging events that are present today for Microsoft Flow. And for example, I'll just click on the first one, which is get a list of new flows. And click continue. And I'm just going to show you, and I urge each of you to go try this today. You can set this up within your each of your own tenants. Is all this is doing is setting a date range. I believe it's like the past week or so, or no, just the past day. So it's looking at the past day, and all it's doing is it's calling the, let me see if I can zoom in here. It's just calling the Office service for pulling the create flow event. And again, in our documentation, we kind of call out there's create flow, edit flow. And really what this does is this flow runs once a day. It pulls a day of data. And again, you can have it run as often as you want. And it says, how many times did someone create an event within the past day? And then what it does is it parses the response. And then actually, this just sends an email with the output. You can see here, this is just crafting the HTML. And ends up just sending an email with the actual flow events that were actually created. And here I can show you a sample of the email that was created. Oops. Let's see here. So you can see here, this, for example, has like a download of all the flows that were created within the past day within my tenant. And it's a really, really powerful way. And again, you can set this up, and this is just talking about one of those events, but any of those events that we emit and all those PowerApps events that we're going to start emitting, you can start doing some very, very powerful things. And again, this is just sending an email, but you can send a push notification. You can take some other type of action. You can have some other type of alert or generate some other type of report. You have all that extensibility and power of Microsoft Flow right at your fingertips. And this is something that actually has existed for, I think about a year since we've had those events flowing. But what I want to talk about next is we have a whole nother level. And we're going to talk about how, what if, for example, if someone created a flow, if I wanted to take a particular action against that flow? What if I wanted to update the permissions of who had access to that flow? What if I wanted to disable that flow? What if I wanted to, I don't know, like, for example, remove the flow entirely, right, after some period, or have an approval process before it was rolled out? So what we're going to talk about kind of in the last section, I'm going to talk around some examples, is how you can action on top of the PowerApps and Flows built and actually manage them and build those policies that you want. If you want to have a certain policy around approvals for apps that are built within the default environment, or they only live for a certain period of time, how would you go about doing that? And so what we've done in the past 6 months is we've rolled out two different things that I'm going to talk about today. The first is a set of PowerShell commandlets there's kind of two libraries, one for app creators and one for administrators. And these you can think of is they give that same level of control that you have within the admin center from a programmatic point of view. So you have full CRUD access, you can think of it, over environments. You got full CRUD access over apps and flows and all of those permissions for them, and also API policies. And from a maker perspective, that's from the administrative library. From an app creator perspective, you have the same level of control, but you're just constrained to the apps and environments that you have access to. So you can think of it as the right-hand category. You have programmatic access over all the environments that you see when you go to admin.powerapps.com. And on the left-hand side, you have programmatic access from a maker perspective over all the apps and flows you go when you go to web.powerapps.com and flow.microsoft.com. And you can do some very, very powerful things with these capabilities. And the link there is to my doc article that kind of outlines all of the many different functions that you see here. There's also a bunch of samples that I think shared out in a couple of blogs. So take a look if you haven't already. And PowerShell is a really, really powerful tool, and especially for admins that already are leveraging it. I know like a lot, you're leveraging it for Office 365, for user, for license management. But one of the key tenets, and I'd say this is really one of the things that we're trying to adopt going forward, is we really want to, and it goes back to one of the things I talked about at the beginning, which is we want to empower administrators to be able to be Power Platform adopters themselves. We want to enable all of you that want to build governance capabilities, policies, on top of the platform, the same platform that people are building on. Because this really is that modern way. It is a new way to build workflows, to solve problems, to build applications. And so what we've done is, this actually already existed for the Microsoft Flow, where they had a management connector, I think, for at least 6 or 12 months now, that provides visibility over flows and permissions within the organization. And now we've rolled this out for all of the Power Platform, for Power Apps and Flow, mind you, excuse me. And what it does is it puts that same level of control that you saw, all those PowerShell commandlet actions, all of the actions within the admin center. You now can leverage those through connectors. You can build apps and flows that give you visibility over the apps within your organization, gives you control over permissions, and control over whether or not those apps and flows continue to be enabled within your organization. And you can start to do some very, very powerful things. And what I want to talk about here is, this is not only kind of me saying this. After the Business Application Summit that we had about 2 months ago, we had a couple companies come in, and we held just a day-long hackathon. And at the time, the management connectors we had were just custom APIs under development. We hadn't really rolled these out yet. And we really were trying to work with them like, hey, how would you use these? What are the right actions to expose here? What are the right ways and the right scenarios that we need to enable? And how would you use this within your organization? And it was, you can see the whiteboard, which is there was the ideas came flowing, and I think think of this as like the same way your business thinks around adopting PowerApps and Flow, and the different applications, the different processes they want to modernize with this platform, and think about taking that similar type of approach from a governance and an administrative point of view. And and here these were the ones that they actually ended up building within a day. And again, there was many more, and these were just the tip of the iceberg. But you can think here, for example, what you really can do is when apps are created, when flows are created, you can start to take action. You can start to implement the policies and the governance that you want within your organization. If you want to have, for example, a certain duration around how long resources can be kept, or who can create certain types of resources, or for how long and in which environments, you can start to automate that. You can build an app for that. You can build a flow that automates this. And this is something that we basically armed them with this knowledge, and we've since launched the connectors in preview, so each and every one of you can now go try them out, and I would urge you to go try them out and give us feedback while they're still in preview, and we probably are still running through the kinks. But what I want to do is, in the remaining time that I have, I want to show you one of the examples, and I'm going to walk through some examples of the types of apps and flows that you can actually build here. And the example that I'm going to talk about is SNCF. SNCF is a company in France that manages a lot of the country's central railways. And they actually are a huge adopter of the Power Platform. And they're a big company. They're over 16,000 people. And they have actually a huge community. Actually, they have a whole Yammer community of 1,000+ users that are all about building apps and flows. and they have this huge catalog of the different apps and flows that have been built within their organization. And they started to hit what many of you either are hitting or are starting to hit within your organization is like, hey, this is a new way of building apps. I need a new way to manage them, right? How do I handle the fact that my business is going off and creating all these applications? How do I go and support them? Now maybe over time I have something like 50 applications. How do I approach that, right? And actually what SMCF was doing was they were building their own app for managing their own catalog. They actually built ratings and reviews into the application. It was actually a pretty awesome app. But this was just stored. They had their own data stored. They had their own database. And what we actually, it was really awesome, we were able to bring to them with the Business Application Summit is like, you don't have to build this and have a separate data store. You can light this up on top of the management connector, which, if you have the right privilege, would light up all those applications, would light up information around when they've been created right there. You don't have to have a separate data store around it. And again, and you can see here that they really adopted the approach of, we understand that this is kind of the new way of building. It's more around how do we support, how do we educate, how do we give proper guidance and change management around how these apps should and can be rolled out within their company. And so now, we've armed them with these connectors, and I'm very excited to see over the next 6 months what they and some of the other companies and what all of you start to do with them. So what I want to do for my last section here is jump in and show a little bit around what you can do with them. All right. So first, I'm going to start with PowerApps. And so I've just gone to web.powerapps.com. This is my environment for demo purposes today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the connector browser app. I already have it opened here. Again, this is just an app that's in preview. And what I want to show you here, hopefully you all can see it, this was actually the app that we used when we were developing the connectors. When they were just custom APIs, and we were trying to test them working within PowerApps and Flow, we built this application. So these are the types of capabilities that you can do. So for example, the Power Platform for Admins connector, and they're broken up into a couple different areas, but this is the connector that will, for example, list all of your environments. It also has the capabilities around API DLP policies as well. But you can see here is that this get admin environment call is able to list all of the environments. This is just the gallery that's been bound to the response from that API, and this is the one line that will that you can use when you're building an app or flow to pull in that information. And say, for example, okay, I take my admin functions environment ID here, and say I want to pull the apps for it. And I can go down here for the PowerApps connector, and again, it's the admin PowerApps connector, and I can go and I can just pull all the apps. And again, this is actually pulling all those that same environment that I'm developing in. Here's all of the demo apps and the test apps that we were building, and I can pull that in programmatically, and all I'm doing is binding that to a connector. But then what you can, fine, you can enumerate the stuff, but what's really powerful is you also have full control over all of the permissions within the app. So not only can you do CRUD on the app, you can remove the app if you wanted, you can update it, you can update the owner of the app, but what you can also do is update the role assignments for the application. So what you can do here is, let me just see if I can, where's get admin role, right? So for example here, this is my application. Right now, it's only been shared with one. So when I say app role, this is how many people has the app actually been shared with, right? And so right now, I've only shared it with myself as an owner, but if I had shared it with other people, I can go here, and I can go and I can share my app with someone else. Say, for example, if you want to have permission from an administrative point of view over every app that's been created, you can do that programmatically now. Or, for example, you can unshare apps automatically. If, for example, you don't want to support sharing with your entire tenant within your organization, you can do that programmatically through this capability as well. Because, again, you have full control, but you have full programmatic control over everything from a PowerApps perspective. And the same goes for the Microsoft Flow connector. And also, we have the same capabilities, those same capabilities from a Maker perspective that you saw for PowerShell are also available in the PowerApps for Maker connector. And what an interesting thing that I had one of our internal employees was building an app that was basically running as a dashboard, and it was running all the time. And the app, he needed to know, for example, if an update to his app had been published. because he wanted the app to kind of prompt the user, hey, relaunch the app, because we don't have the capability to kind of take down the app, because the app was kind of always running on a projector within his team room, and it was showing, latest analytics, latest feeds, latest updates, right? And so what he did was he used the connector, and it calls, for example, if there is a version update, you can see get app versions here, if it was a version update to the app, and he would actually have logic within the app that would then prompt the person, hey, new version of my app has been published, relaunch it, right? And so what I would urge all of you to start thinking around is like, what are those scenarios where within my day-to-day as I'm managing this or trying to approach either my development of the app, management of the app, or education or governance or policies around my app, how could I automate that? How could I take that process, something that may be manual today, and automate it, or build a better experience or a lightweight or mobile experience around it using these connectors? And the next scenario that I want to talk about is kind of the evolution of the SNCF app. So what we've actually done here, this is one of the scenarios, you can think of it as build your own admin center. But actually so much more than that, build your own admin center with additional logic. And so all this is doing is this is pulling in all the environments that you saw from that one connector for this environment, which again is my maker functions environment, but I can go and choose my default environment here. It's then going and pulling all of the app information for them. You can see here for the default environment, I have a heck of a lot more apps. I have like over 178 apps for my default environment. But our demo environment here, we have a more manageable set of 6 apps. And it pulls in all of those apps. It pulls in all the app details, understands what custom connectors have been created in here. Again, you can build the experience that you want, but then you can layer visualizations on top of it. You can have all that customization that PowerApps brings to the table that, for example, you can't get kind of out of our admin experience today. And you can start doing some really cool things. You can flag apps, for example, that are leveraging connections that you haven't actually signed off, or connectors that you haven't approved within your security team. You, for example, can, if you want to, flag apps, for example, that are created by someone that hasn't had the requisite training, right? If you're talking about how you roll this out and have proper education within your organization. So again, this is just kind of visualizing it, but again, with PowerApps and Flow, you can automate all of this. You can take action on all of this. And you can start to do some really, really powerful things and build the experience that you want, and again, in the palm of your hand. And I think PowerApps is one really cool thing, but to me, I think where a lot of the applications come today is around Flow. Because Flow is something where, say I have 180 applications within my environment, that's a lot, right? And to be able to kind of go in one place and actually view and take action manually on that, that's not going to scale depending on the size of your organization. So I think Flow, in my opinion, has the most potential around powering an automated story around having policies or having the right education within your organization. And so if you, again, go to flow.microsoft.com today, search templates. What I want you to do is just click on, select admin here under templates, and click on, and what I'm going to do here is just start from one of the templates. I'm going to trim a bunch of stuff down and then show you the app, the flow that I actually built. Again, pretty simple stuff here. And what this flow template actually does is it's a big flow, but I'm going to trim it down for visual purposes, is all it does is it pulls all of the environments within my organization. It pulls all of the apps. It pulls all the connectors, custom connectors that have been created, and it pulls all the flows, so all the apps and flows, pulls them all together, and shoots out an email. Just kind of, this thing is just like a report of all the apps and flows that have been created within my organization, right? And you can see here, if you want kind of a digest report, oops. This is one that I created using the, oh, not this one. That's the one we're going to create. This is the one from yesterday. This is just that kind of download report of all the apps and flows. So if you want your weekly digest around who's doing what they're building within your organization, that's what this template can do. But what I wanted to talk about was a gentleman came to the booth yesterday and said, hey, like you had a lot of that same things that we've been talking about, looking to roll this out for my organization. And we understand, hey, the default environment is going to be that playground for my company. But I want, after, say, a period of, say, 30 or 90 days, to take some action. So, like, not only do I want to educate people on the right ways of kind of building apps and flows, because you're going to have your best practices. You're going to have your custom connectors to your own proprietary data. You're going to have a suite of apps that are already available. So there's an education aspect to app development within that playground of the default environment. But then if they actually really want to roll this out, I want to have a process for moving that to like a production environment where we have the right permissions around it, where we have the right policy around it. And so he's like, how can I go do that? And I said, well, it's really up to you, the approach that you want. And so what I'm going to do here is just show you, for example, one way of tackling that problem. And all I'm going to do here is just trim everything here that's not apps. So I'm just trimming the custom connector branches and the flow branches from here. Okay. Make it a little easier to see too. And all this is doing now is iterating over all the PowerApps in my organization and sending me an email now. Just trimmed all the flows and custom connectors. And this one just runs every day, but it's Flow, so you can have it run as frequently as you want. And what this is doing here is it's reporting over a period of a week. So this is pulling all of the apps that have been created within the past week. And so what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to change the range to 30 days, right? And I'm going to go down to the selection logic here, which today, what it was set to was like, hey, any app that was created within the past week. And what I'm going to change that to is, because I changed my window to 30 days, I'm now going to say, what apps were created outside of my 30-day window now, right? Now what you can do is, what if I wanted to here, right now this is just sending me an email from a central admin perspective, but what if I wanted to send an email to the person that actually created the app? Say, hey, like your app is now out of compliance, right? You need to now move that over to the proper environment, and maybe with whatever policies that I want. And so what I'm going to do here is, because I've actually pulled the app information within this flow and actually pulled the user's information from Office for this flow, what I'm going to do here is just pull their email. I'm going to say your app is, say needs to be migrated. And what I'm going to do here is, we were pulling all of the information for the app and putting it within a table to send in the broader email, but just for this quick and dirty app, I'm just going to populate it here. And then down below, this email is going to send it to myself. And now what this app is going to do is that these are all not the new apps within my organization, but these are all the expiring PowerApps that need to be managed within my organization. And so I actually already created this flow. I could show you here, okay? Earlier today, actually just behind scenes here, I created this same flow here that actually ran earlier today. And what you can see here is for and this is on Pacific time, excuse me. So for a couple apps here, so you can see this admin connector API browser and admin dashboard. Those were those two same apps that we saw there. And they showed up in this report, and they triggered this flow because these apps we created for the Business Application Summit over a month ago. So these were created outside of that 30-day window, right? And so what if these apps were in the default environment? What if someone had just tried out an app, right? And you want a way of cleaning them up, or a way of telling them, hey, here's how the right way, here's the proper way of moving those over. What's really, really powerful now within these applications, with these flows and this customization is, yes, sending an email is great, but what, for example, if I wanted to take a different action, right? So those same actions, let's say, after sending them an email, say we had some additional period of time, all of those same actions for those management connectors, say I wanted to, for example, disable the flow or manage or update the permissions of the app, you now have all of those capabilities. So the same capabilities here, you can now automate. And you can see here how you can start to bring to life the right policies for your organization around supporting app and flow development.